The human body acts as an antenna for the electromagnetic waves produced by alternating current electrical transients. Much of it is in the 50 to 100 kilohertz range. In October of 2007, the World Health Organization recognized the danger of these frequencies and stated, quote, "High levels of exposure to electric and magnetic fields in the frequency up to 100 kilohertz can affect the nervous systems, resulting in acute health effects, including nerve stimulation," unquote. Armed with this knowledge, it only makes good sense to protect yourself and your family from these dangerous EMF frequencies. In energetic medicine, there is no real separation between mind, body, spirit, and emotions. Both vibrational medicine and bioenergetic medicine are based on the scientific principle that all matter vibrates at subtle levels. We also know that all matter vibrates to a precise frequency and that when we use resonant vibrations, changes in matter occur. Today, more and more people are experiencing adverse health effects as a result of ongoing exposure to electric and magnetic fields. Electrical hypersensitivity is a growing worldwide health concern. Electrical hypersensitivity can be very difficult to diagnose. Many doctors and other health professionals in North America are not yet aware of the recent scientific evidence surrounding electromagnetic energy and its detrimental effect on human health. Scientific studies have shown that electrical pollution affects children more than adults, and women are at least twice as susceptible as men. Examination of adult mortality from all causes in the 1930 and 1940 vital statistics provides evidence that residential electrification was responsible for the epidemic of our diseases of civilization in the 20th century. The price we have paid for the convenience of electricity in morbidity and mortality since the early 1900s almost defies quantification. The real surprise is that cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, and suicide seem to be strongly related to residential electrification. Science is now beginning to fully sense the subtle energies involved in cells and to measure the electromagnetic reality of biology. The measurement of pH is really a measurement of voltage. The deterioration in people's health is directly correlated to a decline in pH and voltage within the cells. Voltage is fundamentally important because the body is constantly regenerating itself. Problems occur when the cells run out of voltage before healing is accomplished. To correct chronic disease, you must insert enough electrons to push the cells back up to the healing voltage of minus 50 millivolts. You must also have enough raw materials or nutrition to make new cells. Nutrition without voltage does not work. Voltage without nutrition does not work. You must have both. Typically, people leak the most voltage from their teeth. Metal fillings and crowns and chronic infections from root canals all tend to leak lots of voltage. People may have great diets and normal hormone function but are unable to get well because of the chronic infections and voltage leaking from their mouth. The impact of putting metals and root canals into the mouth is well understood by Oriental medicine, which long ago embraced the concept of meridians and energy. However, conventional Western medicine, with its emphasis on disease management, ignores the mouth. Healthy teeth plus enough thyroid hormones plus good nutrition equals keys to health, because then the voltage is normal. The primary cause of decreased voltage and acidity is hypothyroidism. All voltage in the body is stored in fat. All our cells are made from cholesterol derived from good fat. Bad fats make it hard for cells to function and impossible to hold voltage. Many people try vegetarian diets and do not feel well 6 to 12 months later because they're lacking good animal fat in their diet. They are often unable to maintain normal voltage and are like a sputtering battery. Your biofield is your energetic system. Your biofield protects you from external stressors. The bigger and stronger it is, the more efficient and effective it is in resisting external stresses. Your biofield can become damaged by electropollution as well as biochemically from a poor diet and from physical and emotional stresses. It manifests as a chain reaction of measurable physiologic responses. Stress-induced heating, clumping of red blood cells, or rouleau effect, hardening of the cell membranes. That's why electropollution is considered the greatest threat to the 21st century. You have the power to reduce the impact of external stressors, strengthen your biofield, and take control of your wellness. In healthy tissues, electrical currents are carried by both ionic conduction and electron semiconduction. Light produces life and is stored in the cells of organisms, more precisely in the DNA within its structured water and each nucleus. All living cells of plants, animals, and human beings emit biophotons, which cannot be seen by the naked eye, but can be measured by special equipment. Fritz Albert Popp, PhD, is a leader in the study of biophotonic energy. Popp monitored and was able to confirm that living cells not only emit or radiate small bursts of light, they also absorb light. His studies showed that healthy cells will store light longer than unhealthy cells. He also discovered that a healthy cell radiates coherent light while a diseased cell radiates chaotic light. Cells communicate by converting biophoton signals, or light, into electromagnetic oscillations, electricity, of resonant frequencies. Biochemical messengers carry these specific frequency signatures between cell structures. In essence, you are crystallized or precipitated light. Physical objects are made out of charge. Matter is made of molecules, made of atoms, made of positive and negative electric charge. Electric charge is the major component of all atoms. Matter is made out of canceled electric charge. It is the electrostatic force that drives electric current. Without electrostatics, there could be no voltage, hence no current and no electrical devices. The world is made of molecules, and molecules are made of atoms. Atoms are themselves composed of positively and negatively charged particles. Atoms are held together by electrostatic attraction. If matter is made of little dots, then the bars that connect all the dots together are made of electrostatic fields. Also, atoms are connected to each other through chemical bonding, and chemical bonding is based upon electrostatic attraction-repulsion forces. If we cancel out some opposite charge by placing a positive charge together with a negative charge, we get material substance. Positive protons plus negative electrons equals neutral atoms. All functions of the human body are electrochemical in their operations. All matter, all human beings emit a distinct frequency vibration, which is an integral feature of physical existence. Every living entity has a vibratory pattern, which is typical of the species which the entity represents. Every biological process is also an electric process. Health and sickness are related to the bioelectric currents in your body. Cancer and other biological challenges are first and foremost electrogenetic disturbances. vibrational dissonance within a universal rhythm. All cells possess an electrical potential that exists across the cell membrane. This is commonly referred to as the cell membrane potential. Cell membranes are composed of a bilayer of highly mobile fat or lipid molecules that electrically act as insulators or dielectrics. The cell membrane lipids also act to restrict the movement of charged ions and electrons across the membrane, except through specialized membrane-spanning protein ion channels. Membrane-spanning protein semiconductors are active in this transmembrane flow of charged particles. Electrochemical forces across the membrane regulate chemical exchange across the cell. The cell membrane potential helps control cell membrane permeability to a variety of nutrients and helps turn on the machinery of the cell, particularly energy production and the synthesis of macromolecules. All healthy cells have a membrane potential of about -60 to -100 millivolts. There are computerized devices that will measure the body voltage. This image has a lot of numbers on it. Don't be confused. It helps you relate the cell voltage to cell pH and salivary pH. The colors are those normally found on pH strips. Adults usually run their body at -20 millivolts and a pH of 7.35. Children, young adults, and athletes run closer to -30 millivolts. When a cell needs to heal itself, it must get to -50 millivolts so it has enough voltage to heal. After healing is complete, it returns to the operating voltage of -20 millivolts. Problems occur when the voltage drops below the operating voltage. At -15 millivolts, you're tired. At -10 millivolts, you're sick. At -5 millivolts, things quit working. As voltage continues to drop, several bad things happen. You get chronic pain, oxygen levels decrease, and infections occur. The infections further damage your cells as they begin to have you for lunch. At +30 millivolts, you get cancer. It becomes obvious that chronic disease is always associated with the loss of voltage. To correct chronic disease, you must insert enough electrons to push the cells back up to the healing voltage of -50 millivolts. You must also have enough raw materials or nutrition to make new cells. Nutrition without voltage does not work. Voltage without nutrition does not work. You must have both. The voltage in your thumb is -20 millivolts. Now you hit it with a hammer. The voltage immediately goes to -50 millivolts, so it has enough power to replace the cells you damaged with the hammer. At -50 millivolts, we have the signs familiar as inflammation, throbbing pain, swelling, redness, and heat, as well as decreased function. When tissue is at -50 millivolts and healing is occurring, two things are possible. You can have enough electrons to heal the damaged cells, and it returns to normal at -20 millivolts. The other possibility is that it runs out of voltage before the damaged cells are replaced. It then drops to a voltage lower than -20 millivolts. Now you have all the signs of degeneration. The pain changes from throbbing to a constant ache. The swelling may or may not be present. Redness turns to paleness, and heat disappears as circulation diminishes. Remember that we normally don't get well by making damaged cells work correctly. We get well by making new cells that work correctly. We replace the rods and cones in our retinas every 48 hours. The skin you're sitting in is only 6 weeks old. Your liver is 8 weeks old. Your brain replaces itself every 8 months. Your bones are replaced every year. Making new cells requires raw materials, nutrition, and the voltage to use them. When your thumb is less than -20 millivolts, There are no pharmaceuticals or surgeries that will heal it, because there isn't enough voltage to make it heal. You must insert electrons to raise the voltage to minus 50 millivolts so that new cells can be made. The body knows how to heal most things if you give it the nutrition and voltage to do it. There are multiple sources where the body normally gets electrons, like unprocessed foods, alkaline water, sunshine, standing in the dirt, etc. This creates a body pool of electrons. Cell membranes are made up of opposing phospholipids or fats. Because of their unique properties, this arrangement creates a capacitor, a unit designed to store electrons. Thus, cell membranes are like small batteries. Underneath the cell membranes are small power stations called mitochondria. If you eat plastic fats, your cell membranes become like cellophane and won't hold a charge. You become a dead battery. Inside the mitochondria is a rechargeable battery system called ATP-ADP. When the battery is charged, it is called ATP. When it is discharged, it is called ADP. As power is drained from the ATP battery, it becomes discharged and is called ADP. Electrons are then brought down from the cell membrane to recharge ADP back to ATP. ATP is also made by the Krebs cycle. This process takes place about 70 times per day in every mitochondria, and each cell has up to 2,000 mitochondria. We've come to understand that chronic disease is accompanied by a loss of voltage. You will usually find the cause of the loss of power by studying this image. If you can answer the question, why did I lose enough voltage to get sick, you will know how to get well. There are many things that can destroy your power grid. However, the four most common ones are eating trans fats, not having enough functional thyroid hormone, heavy metal poisoning, and dental infections. Bioelectric changes in cancer cells. Cancer cells have 1. Less efficient production of cellular energy, or ATP. 2. Cell membranes that exhibit different electrochemical properties and a different distribution of electric charges than normal tissues. 3. Different lipid and sterol content than normal cells. 4. Altered membrane composition and membrane permeability, which results in the movement of potassium, magnesium, and calcium out of cancer cells and the accumulation of sodium and water into cells. And 5. They have lower potassium concentrations and higher sodium and water content than normal cells. An electrolyte is a substance in solution capable of conducting an electric current, and where there is electric current flow, there is also magnetism. Healthy cells maintain inside of themselves a high concentration of potassium and a low concentration of sodium. But when cells are injured or cancerous, sodium and water flows into the cells, and potassium, magnesium, and calcium and zinc are lost from the cell interior. Electrolytes begin as minerals, the inorganic hard rock of our planet. Minerals are metallic elements, but most metals have so much charge they are rarely found as pure elements. Instead, they readily react chemically with other atoms to form oxides, chlorides, sulfides, sulfates, silicates, carbonates, etc. The metal elements coordinate and direct the flow of electrons, reactions between atoms, strength of the membranes, and actions of enzymes in biological life. Atoms react chemically by exchanging electrons. How atoms share, pair, pass around, circulate, and store electrons decides how ions form, atoms bond, molecules are made, carbons chain, cells sing, and hormones ring. Some elements, mostly metals, easily release electrons, to have a positive charge, a cation. Others capture extra electrons to acquire a negative charge, an anion. Simple electrolytes can be three types: acid, which is positive; base, which is negative; salt, which is positive and negative, or neutral. Every enzyme requires an electrolyte as its key component. Without this electric spark, there can be no taste, or smell, or sight, no sensation, or motion, or light, and no life. Coenzymes play vital roles in metabolism. Without them, most cellular reactions would come to an end and the cell would die. Coenzymes such as NAD+ and FAD are used to carry electrons to and from many kinds of oxidation-reduction reactions. Oxidation-reduction or redox reactions are electron transfer reactions in which the molecules losing electrons become oxidized and those gaining electrons become reduced. Oxidation-reduction reactions are fundamental considerations in the realm of bioenergetic systems. Molecules hold and store electric current at particular voltages. Increasing the number of electrons in voltage is what we call reducing. It has more negative potential. Decreasing the number of electrons is called oxidizing, or pulling electrons back. Some liquid solutions are better electrolytes than others. The better the electrolyte, the better the current flow, and consequently the larger the resultant magnetic field. Iron is especially susceptible to magnetization. The human blood carries in solution relatively large amounts of iron. Lightning, exchanges of electric charge between upper atmosphere and water in the earth, occurs over 1,000 times a second. This sudden rush of electrons through air and into soil is nature's most intense ion generator. There is a constant transfer of electricity occurring across cell membranes. The electroencephalograph signal has a typical amplitude of 2 to 100 microvolts and a frequency spectrum from 0.1 to 60 Hz. Most activity occurs within the following frequency bands: delta, which is 0.5 to 4 Hz, theta, which is 4 to 8 Hz, alpha, which is 8 to 13 Hz, beta, 13 to 22 Hz, and gamma, which is 30 to 40 Hz. Human heartbeat and respiration signatures have been measured at ranges exceeding 10 meters using the radar vital signs monitor. The electric message is carried along the nerves as a result of changes in the quantities of potassium and sodium salts inside and outside the cell. The effect is like that of a wet battery where different solutions separated by a semi-permeable membrane give rise to an electric current. An electric difference of 65 to 95 millivolts can be measured across the membrane. The electric poles of water molecules attract, attach, and hold other ionic or polar chemicals, and their constant motions carry them off, thus disassembling them. Fire burns, but water dissolves. Life's secret is this solution. The bipolar geometry of water is not only electric, but magnetic. The outer electrons of the hydrogen-oxygen bonds are in orbital spin, and a moving charge generates a magnetic field. So this tiny dipole also has a minute magnetic field around it. Minerals provide strong electromagnetic charges to hold organic molecules in tight, stable association. This also boosts water's capacity to conduct electric current. Delicate hydrogen bonds are the same force that holds two amino acids together as in the base pairs between the twin strands of DNA's spiral helix. Water's tiny electric poles give it remarkable power to dissolve other substances, especially ionic substances, and to hold them in dynamic suspension, floating in fluid mobility. Minerals impose a definite geometry and order to water. Mineral ions become the seeds of symmetry for the water molecules, as the geometry of electrons in the mineral's orbitals provides the pattern for the solution's complex structures. The presence of mineral ions alters the angles of the water's lattice, warping and bending the water molecule's organization to accommodate the strong ionic charge. Such slight shifts in geometry can alter water's physical properties, such as melting and boiling temperatures and chemical reactivity. Your muscles are driven by long chain molecules which are forced to slide across each other. This sliding is performed by electrostatic attraction and repulsion between parts of the molecule, and so your muscles are electrostatic motors. Nerves function as tiny capacitors with charge pumps to electrify them and ion gates to discharge them. All the data in the computers all over the world are stored as tiny patterns of electrostatic charges. Your liquid crystal components within your cells and extracellular matrix of your body possess many of the features of televisions, computers, and electronic circuits. Components analogous to conductors, semiconductors, resistors, transistors, capacitors, inductor coils, transducers, switches, generators, and batteries exist in you and in all biological tissues. The cell membrane is an organic information processor, a liquid crystal semiconductor with gates and channels. The cell membrane is an organic homologue of a silicon chip. The cell is a self-powered, carbon-based organic microprocessor. The central processing unit is the cell membrane. The keyboard or data entry are the membrane receptors. The hard disk or memory is the nucleus with DNA-coded software. The screen or data output is the physical state of the cell. The data is transduced into biological behavior by effector proteins. ATP is assembled by an enzyme which is run by a tiny rotating electrostatic motor. The spring in each ATP is cocked by a little rotating molecular machine run by electrostatics. The reaction is reversible, and ATP can drive the motor, changing it into an electrostatic generator. A typical human body contains around 10 to the 16th of these rotary electrostatic motors. It's 10 with 16 zeros. Pulsed electromagnetic fields regulate virtually every cell function, including DNA synthesis, RNA synthesis, protein synthesis, cell division, cell differentiation, morphogenesis, and neuroendocrine regulation. The reactions that make up the electron transport system are a series of oxidation-reduction reactions in which the electrons are passed from one electron carrier molecule to another until they ultimately are accepted by oxygen atoms. Biological behavior can be controlled by invisible energy forces, which include thought. A human is made of 100,000 different proteins, linear chains whose molecular links are comprised of amino acid molecules. Each of the 20 different amino acids has a unique shape. When linked together in a chain, the resulting proteins fold into elaborate three-dimensional wire sculptures. The protein sculpture's patterns is determined by the sequence of its amino acid links. The balancing of electromagnetic charges along the protein's chain serves to control the final shape of the sculpture. The unique shape of a protein sculpture is referred to as its conformation. When proteins chemically couple with other molecules, they change the distribution of electromagnetic charges in the protein. Changes in charge cause the protein to change its shape. A protein generates motion as it changes shape. Groups of interacting proteins that work together in carrying out a specific function are referred to as pathways. The activities of specific protein pathways provide for digestion, excretion, respiration, reproduction, and all of the other physiologic functions employed by living organisms, all influenced by electrical activity. High-frequency voltage transients exist everywhere on electric power wiring today, both inside and outside of buildings, caused by an interruption of electrical current flow. These should not be present on normal 60-cycle sine waves used in power distribution. Electric fields, such as those emitted by power lines, cell phones, and cell towers, and home appliances, including television, have frequencies between 2 and 100 kilohertz or 1000 hertz in the radio frequency range and can have profound biological effects. We are in the midst of an invisible and silent plague of pandemic proportions that has been woven into our everyday lives. Dirty electricity is in virtually every building, whether it be our homes, schools, workplaces, or hospitals. Energy-efficient appliances and equipment are among the culprits that create dirty electricity. Many houses with solar panels have very high levels of dirty electricity. Wind turbines can also generate dirty electricity, which is then transferred along the grid. Most people, even if exposed to levels and wavelengths that are literally killing them, remain unaware. Even when they do experience palpable sensations, the cause simply does not occur to them. Everyone living in areas of the world with electricity is being negatively affected. It is only a question of degree. Electric workers and their children have a higher risk of brain tumors. The incidence of childhood leukemia is higher in children who live near power lines that carry high voltage. Dr. Sam Milham in 1982 was the first to link workers' exposure to electromagnetic fields with higher rates of leukemia. Lloyd Morgan, a brain tumor survivor and director of the Central Brain Tumor Registry of the United States, introduced into the U.S. Congress that became law in 2002. Along with breast cancer, leukemia, and diseases of the central nervous system, brain tumors are among the diseases that are more prominent in this health issue. Power line exposure has also been associated with an increased incidence of suicide. Extreme low frequencies act as a cancer promoter. Extreme low frequency fields interact with the cell membrane and can affect hormones, calcium exchange, and tissue growth. Extreme low frequencies suppress the production of melatonin, a cancer inhibitor, by the pineal gland. Electromagnetic fields can be generated by spinning magnets, which is what steel-belted radial tires rotating are. A blender from 6 inches away emits between 30 and 100 milligauss. An electric can opener 6 inches away emits between 500 and 1500 milligauss. A hairdryer 6 inches away emits between 1 and 700 milligauss, and a ceiling fan 12 inches away emits between 3 and 50 milligauss. Some sources maintain that even 2 milligauss is enough to disrupt a person's biological function, and that the maximum emission a person can safely absorb is only 1 milligauss. Cumulative damage may result from subtle chronic exposures. Such electric fields form around any electric charge, according to numerous authorities, including those within your cells. There are an enormous number of studies showing radiofrequency microwave radiation to be harmful to human health. Thousands of studies conducted over the last 80 years have found a wide variety of bioeffects, including permanent DNA damage. In 1968, President Johnson, in his State of the Union address, promised to protect the American people from the electromagnetic field radiation emitted by TV sets and other electronic equipment, etc. He subsequently signed into law the Radiation Control for Health and Safety Act. In 1971, President Nixon's own Radiation Management Advisory Panel warned him that the nation's entire population might be at risk, especially if future generations are considered. In 1995, President Clinton released a memorandum stating, "Transmitter masts should not be sited on schools or near residential areas," unquote. In 2010, U.S. President Obama's own Cancer Advisory Panel identified the risk to children and adolescents from wireless radiation as the most pressing problem. Thousands of studies link low-level wireless radio frequency radiation exposures to a long list of adverse biological effects, including DNA single and double strand breaks, oxidative damage, disruption of cell metabolism, increased blood-brain barrier permeability, melatonin reduction, disruption to brain glucose metabolism, and generation of stress proteins. Electromagnetic field radiation is emitted by all wireless products and devices, but none more so than the insidious smart meter, particularly when they are operational in what electric utilities call meshed grid networks. The smart meter RF emissions constitute an all-new bizarre pattern, unlike the pattern of emissions from your cell phone or any other RF emitting device. To date, there have been no studies published on the effects of smart meter radiation on animals, plants, or humans. Some research indicates that pulsed radiation induces a greater biological effect than constant radiation. A smart meter is a device you cannot turn off or move, so your exposure to this source of radio frequency is out of your control. The rate and intensity of the radio frequency radiation is also not under your control. We are coming to learn it is not under the utilities' control. Smart meters are unlike cell phones or Wi-Fi in their bizarre pattern of sharp spikes of radio frequency. At least 90% of the radio frequency emitted by the smart meters is not transmitting your electrical usage data, but is part of the mesh network, talking to itself, and includes a lot of redundant chatter between your meter and other meters. The figures for radio frequency exposure from RF transmitting power meters given by utilities are time average numbers which hide the peak power of the smart meter and disguise the continuous nature of the pulses. Our government has never once seen fit to make it mandatory for industry to first prove by qualified non-industry scientists replicating real-life applications that the radiation emitted by wireless products and devices and toys is safe. Nor impose the precautionary principle, even though the World Health Organization stated in 2003 that there was sufficient evidence to justify its application for both extreme low frequency and radio frequency electromagnetic fields. Today, the government still appears to be more concerned with industrial growth than it is about protecting the health and safety of our population. With the ever-extensive use of wireless technologies, nobody can avoid being exposed, because on top of the increased number of 5G transmitters, according to estimates, 10 to 20 billion connections will be part of the Internet of Things. All of these together can cause a substantial increase in the total long-term radio frequency electromagnetic field exposure to all inhabitants. Non-industry scientists the world over are worried that the new, much higher microwave frequencies used in 5G technology, 28 GHz, 37 to 40 GHz, and 64 to 71 GHz, have never been independently tested for safety. And companies are already installing 5G in some US states. Wi-Fi is even being added to school buses, irradiating children within a metal cage, amplifying the exposure. We're going to be bombarded by really high frequencies at low, short-range intensities, creating a yet more complicated, denser soup of electrosmog. Millimeter waves do not travel well through buildings, and they tend to be absorbed by rain and plants. This interferes with the signal. Added to this, higher frequency waves, like millimeter waves, also have much shorter wavelengths that can't travel far. To counter this problem, 5G will utilize smaller cells. This could mean wireless antennas on every lamppost, utility pole, home, and business throughout entire neighborhoods, towns, and cities. Current 4G cell towers have about a dozen or so antenna ports to support all communication. The new smaller 5G cell towers, or bases, will be MIMO, multiple input, multiple output, and carry about 100 ports. These towers will probably be about 4 feet tall, as opposed to the usual 90 feet towers currently erected around us. Cells will be available within a 100-meter range, and these smart antennas will be able to differentiate between various mixed-up signals like radio waves and Wi-Fi signals in the air and beam them back in an orderly fashion, so to speak. Fifth generation, or 5G technology, if implemented nationally, would further irradiate the entire population without their knowledge or consent. This would be yet another, even more serious violation of the Nuremberg Code and the most heinous crime imaginable. Government's total disregard for the health and safety of the public has resulted in 1. A growing host of disease epidemics such as autism, ADHD, cancers, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, ALS, and other diseases of the brain, central nervous system, and immune system, which most people had not heard of before wireless technology appeared. 2. Homes and dwellings are now far more susceptible to break-ins, intrusions, and the threat of electrical fires, thanks to state-mandated smart meters, which are unbelievably intrusive, invasive, hackable, fire-prone, and very expensive. And 3. National security is now at greater risk than at any other previous time in our history, thanks to the government's irresponsible decision to incorporate smart meters in our national power grid. Very recently, new research is suggesting that nearly all the human plagues which emerged in the 20th century, like common acute lymphoblastic leukemia in children, female breast cancer, malignant melanoma, and asthma, can be tied to some facet of our use of electricity. There is an urgent need for governments and individuals to take steps to minimize community and personal electromagnetic field exposures. Wertheimer and Leeper were the first to see a magnetic field breast cancer connection in their 1982 study of residential magnetic field exposures of adults. They discovered a nearly 3-fold increase among women younger than 55 who lived near power lines, indicating that magnetic field exposure had accelerated development and growth of breast cancer. Breast tissue, along with fetal tissue, is the most sensitive tissue in the body and also the most sensitive to artificial man-made radiation. The contention that electromagnetic fields are a risk factor, let alone a causative factor in female breast cancer, has been heavily resisted. There have been thousands of studies of electromagnetic fields, more so than with any other health issue. There are more epidemiological studies that link cancer to these fields than to environmental tobacco smoke. The list of cancers showing an increased risk in firefighters strongly overlaps with the list of cancers with high rates in workers exposed in electromagnetic fields, and radiofrequency radiation. Recent studies of long-term California firefighters working in fire stations near cell towers have shown that they have many of the signs and symptoms of microwave illness, like sleep deprivation, depression, headaches, tremors, and slowed reaction time. They had abnormal functional brain scans. We are all concerned about the infiltration of chemicals into our wider and more personal environments, yet the combined effects of toxic agents together with electromagnetic fields enhance the damage as compared to the toxic exposure alone. Cancer clusters serve to show us what is happening silently on a daily basis in everyone's lives. The adults and children of today have already been affected by these electromagnetic fields. Miscarriage, stillbirth, preterm delivery, altered gender ratio, and congenital abnormalities have been linked to maternal exposure. Testicular abnormalities, atypical sperm, chromosomal aberrations, and offspring congenital defects have all been linked to paternal exposure. Fathers employed in industries with higher than average electromagnetic field exposure have also been noted to have offspring with higher rates of brain and spinal cord tumors. Artificially created electromagnetic radiation is a determinant in the development of malignant melanoma, an increasingly prevalent cancer that was uncommon until around 50 years ago. Electric fields are always present on charged electric wires and devices plugged into outlets and are created by differences in voltage. Alternating current electric fields are present anytime an electric device or power cord is plugged in to an electric outlet. An electric field will exist even when there is no current flowing. Energy-efficient bulbs, laptop computers, electric blankets, metal lamps, and clock radios are all common source points. We are actually exposed to this harmful field wherever we are within a house all day and night because electric fields can extend up to 10 to 15 feet. But its harmful effect is especially disruptive when we try to rest and rejuvenate during the night. Sleeping in a high electric field environment keeps you from having deep, restful stage 4 and 5 sleep. When it comes to electromagnetic field exposure, electric fields are the more ominous factor to consider. Lately, more evidence has accumulated that the electric field is having more impact on health than originally thought. High voltage lines, power lines, and common items such as transformers, laptops and computers, cathode ray tube monitors, energy-efficient lighting and power cords can also produce strong electric and magnetic fields. Any harmful electromagnetic fields can be classed as dirty, yet there is another facet of electricity termed dirty electricity that is now seen as even more of a threat to our health than the electromagnetic fields mentioned above. Electricity is termed dirty or polluted when the normal 60-cycle sine wave carries with it various high frequencies which damage electronics and living beings. Industry and large corporations spend billions to protect their electronic equipment from this, but nobody's looking out for humans. Many years ago, before the discovery of solid-state devices, now found in all electronic equipment, the electricity that powers our homes, buildings, and factories was like a meadow in the country, gently varying, quiet, harmonious, and clean. Today, our electricity is no longer harmonious, quiet, gently varying, and clean. It is filled with abrupt changes in character described as dirty electricity or dirty power. This dirt is much like noisy static you might hear on a radio playing wonderful classical music. The underlying music is there and it could be beautiful and relaxing, but all that static is too irritating and you change the station or turn off the radio. Unfortunately, with dirty electricity, turning it off is not possible. Dirty electricity is everywhere in our environment. you are generating this dirt in your very own house, as are your neighbors and the office down the block and the factory in the industrial part of town. The dirt is produced by the workings of all of our electronic equipment like computers, TVs, radios, microwaves, light dimmers, digital clocks, and cell phone chargers. The dirt follows the electrical lines around your house and out of your house, following the wires that supply electricity to your house. The neighbor's dirt and the office's dirt and the factory's dirt follows the same paths and ends up in every house, office, and factory. We have assumed until recently that this form of energy is not biologically active. However, recent research tells us that this dirty electricity is biologically active. Common causes of dirty electricity are battery chargers, entertainment systems, Wi-Fi routers and modems, computers that plug in, solar power installations, light dimmer switches, microwave ovens, video game consoles, blenders and mixers, cordless phones, hair dryers, printers and scanners, multi-speed fans, televisions, smart meters, and smart appliances. Dr. Martin Graham, an emeritus professor of electrical engineering at University of California at Berkeley, and Dave Stetzer developed the Graham-Stetzer meter that measures transients on electric wires by plugging into an outlet and a plug-in capacitor filter for reducing transients. These GS filters, capacitors, attenuate much of the most significant 4,000 Hz to 100,000 Hz completely of the dangerous high-frequency energy riding on your home's wires. When a current flowing through the wire is made to oscillate at a very rapid rate, 3,000 Hz or greater, the floating electromagnetic field will break free and be launched into space. The wire acts like an antenna. At the speed of light, the energy will radiate outward in a pulsating pattern, much like the waves in a pond. Transients are caused by interruption of electrical current flow, essentially creating high-frequency voltage transients that should not be present on normal 60-cycle sine waves used in power distribution. When filters to reduce the dirty electricity were installed in homes and schools, symptoms such as chronic fatigue, depression, headaches, body aches and pains, ringing in the ears, dizziness, diabetes, impaired sleep, memory loss, and confusion were reduced. The Amish in the United States and Canada who live without electricity have type 2 diabetes prevalence rates about half those of the non-Amish, and the Amish have lower rates of cancer, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's disease, and suicide. Based on this research, it is estimated that as much as 50% of the population may be hypersensitive to dirty electricity. Children may be more sensitive than adults, and dirty electricity in schools may be interfering with education and possibly contributing to disruptive behavior associated with attention deficit disorder. Dirty electricity may elevate plasma glucose levels among diabetics and exacerbate symptoms for those with multiple sclerosis and tinnitus. You can take positive steps to reduce or eliminate the effects of these harmful fields from your everyday living and working environments. The first step is to have any smart meters removed from your premises and install an analog meter. Then get rid of Wi-Fi and use Ethernet cables for internet access on your computers. Turn off the Wi-Fi on the computer. New Mocha 2 adapters make a whole home wired solution simple and cost-effective. Mocha 2 uses your home's built-in TV cable outlets, so you can bring wired connectivity to each room with a TV cable outlet without conflict to your cable service. It's safer, faster, and more secure than wireless, And unlike power line adapters, Mocha 2 does not produce voltage transients or dirty electricity. One adapter at your router and one in each room you want internet. Replace any wireless mouse or keyboard with a wired mouse and keyboard. This makes a surprisingly big difference. If you must use Wi-Fi, and even if you hardwire your laptop, consider a laptop pad to shield from wireless and magnetic fields. The necessity is even greater for pregnant or future moms, since in utero exposures to EMF have been shown to be particularly harmful to developing babies, eggs, and sperm. Instead of holding your phone next to your head during a call, always use either hands-free or a good air tube earpiece. This is not what I mean by hands-free use. Use the Wi-Fi feature as little as possible on your cell phone. Turn it off when not using it, and turn on airplane mode at night and as much as possible. For reducing your body's exposure from your cell phone's EMF, you can use an EMF blocking phone sleeve with single-sided protection. It maintains your cell signal and connectivity while protecting your body. Cell phones are designed to increase their power output when the signal is lower. This means when you have 0 or 1 bars of connectivity, your phone is emitting up to 1,000 times more EMF as it tries to look for a signal. Then remove any wireless phones from your environment and replace with old-fashioned hardwired ones. Protect your reproductive organs and offspring. You can use a protective blanket for improvement in sleep or for covering yourself while using these devices. There are child-size EMF blankets as well. Men, science shows that sperm counts are dropping rapidly, and one of the primary causes is electromagnetic fields. So don't put your cell phone in your pockets. Do not use wireless baby monitors. I can't say it plainer than that. These transmit high amounts of EMF, and the risk of harm far outweighs any benefit. Then check for any hidden electromagnetic fields from a neighbor or electric panel or meter, etc. And don't sleep or spend time in those areas. You can also mask sources like this with an aluminum screen, which will reflect the waves. Unplug clocks and other power devices and move them away from sleeping locations. These emit a subtle magnetic field shown to affect biology. At the very least, turn off all of the above mentioned items at night while you're sleeping. That amounts to 1/3 of your life and is essential for good sleep, which is needed for the immune function and the ability to rejuvenate and repair the body.